Yes, and as you said, and thanks for having me back again, Phil. It's a great event that you put on, and I really appreciate the opportunity. And the last time I was on a year ago, I did mention in my email, in my presentation, the dream of the death of email. So it was fantastic to hear Oliver's support in that endeavour because it's just such a closed system to try and work with. So there's more of us out there trying to get that goal, which is fantastic. Then my title is Got 100 billion to Spend. A WBS ain't going to cut it. And really, what drives behind that is just the fact that our endeavours over the years have been sort of fraught with the traditional view of Gantt chart scheduling and project controls. And so we're trying to, while they're very important functions, bring them in along with some other functions to get some better outcomes on some large infrastructure spending. And that's pretty much what my talk is about today. What you'll get at the end of this presentation in the last 5 minutes is a announcement and a launch of a new feature that's coming out in June, July of this year for our product that basically is the culmination of about 3 to 4 years of AI data mining software development. And it's really blown me away. I can't believe the outcome. It was never what I expected, which actually links in with some of the stuff I'm going to talk about anyway. So yeah, that's a prelude to what's coming in about 10 minutes time. But before I can get to that, I really need to get a bit of background into this so that people can understand why we're doing what we're doing and maybe believe that the end outcome is actually possible. 17 years ago, 2003, four things happened in my life that basically became the catalyst for the next 17 years of my life. The first three were meeting these three fantastic people on the screen here. They're three doctors in the field of project management. They're academics in project management. And at that time, I met them discreetly, independently, even though they all knew each other at the time. I met them differently and didn't know that. And they basically introduced me to the concept of managing project complexity through the analysis of complex adaptive systems as it is analyzed in the natural sciences. And it was a mind-blowing thing to talk to these people. And I put them on the screen because they have guided me through their works and their published works, but also especially Kay Remington through conversations over the years that has really helped what we've done today. Even though a lot of what I've done and how I've applied their works, they're in shocking disgust with. So it's not exactly 100% aligned, but what I mean by complex adaptive systems is in the natural sciences, they're analyzing, chaos theory and complexity theory all the time. And a complex adaptive system is basically demonstrated through this image, which is a flock of starlings called a murmuration. And it comes from the most amazing video on the internet, I think, which I've got a link to in the back of this PowerPoint that people can watch later. So that's a bunch of birds flying in formation. And the thing about this, the biggest characteristic about this that I love in terms of complex adaptive systems, and this is not project related, this is just the world, the planet we live in, is the emergence factor, that it's not predefined, it emerges over time. And I think that can be related to anyone who's worked on a project here will know that there are so many things that happen to you through the life of that project that you end up coming with an outcome that's considerably different to what was potentially originally conceived when the first business case was put together. And so as project managers, yes, we need to control the elements of the iron triangle, time, cost, and quality, but we also need to allow for emergence, and we need to build tools and management capability and contracts and a whole bunch of other stuff to better harness the power of complex adaptive systems. And so what we're trying to do is foster that. And if you look at a work breakdown structure, very simple one like on this screen, you'll be able to define some activities quite well. You would have done them before, they're easy to understand, they're in front of your face, and you can operationalize those works quite well, track and control them, get earned value percentages on them. But then there'll be that clunky task 5 that's going on for weeks and weeks and weeks, and you haven't been able to break that down because you don't really know what it is yet. And that's where really the control element needs to be loosened and more management needs to come in, active management, proactive management of the emergence of that particular task and its impact on the other tasks in the project. And that's really what we're talking about today. Because when you actually look at the properties of a complex adaptive system as it's defined in the natural world, you start to see a lot of project management elements to it. There's a hierarchy to those ways those birds flock and the way other complex adaptive systems operate. These are common characteristics across all complex adaptive systems. There's communication, effective communication, and Oliver was, screaming from the rooftops about how important that is for his product to improve the communication flows on a construction site, which we see as being, just a no-brainer win-win. There's control. Without control, you have chaos. So there's definitely control. There's adaptiveness. So in the project management world, your change control processes around that would be elements of adaptiveness. And obviously within team development, we have high performing teams that are self-organizing. That's what we want in a complex adaptive system. One where it gets a little bit challenging for the traditional PMBOK related project management body of knowledge related data is non-linearity. You don't see a lot of loops in a Gantt chart. It's a kind of linear process. So again, it's a bit of a hint that is pretty much not going to be the tool that solves a complex project. It can help in elements of the network, but possibly not all. Another one that actually, there's a lot of content that goes underneath these bullets. Obviously, a lot of research in the world around these, but the control one is interesting because the closer you get to chaos, the more effective your team. So it's on the edge of chaos is what you want to be able to create the best results. And then there's this chaos to control continuum that goes on in the natural world. So in our projects, when you want to actually be high performing, you want to actually push the boundaries. You want to give, you want to devolve decision making. You want to push it into the field as much as possible so that you can get more rapid response. Once you start passing information down the line, it loses its effectiveness and people misunderstand it, reinterpret it, it gets massaged and it becomes less clear. So an example of what we're trying to do with our software can be paralleled with what Tesla's trying to do with their car, full self-driving artificial intelligence. They are getting all the cars that people buy now to send them information without them knowing to their central cerebral computer to basically build their full self-driving AI software. And then they push that back to the cars so that the communication is two-way in updated software that they do over the air wirelessly. And that's a diagram over the top of Sydney because the rest of this presentation is on a case study of Sydney and easing Sydney congestion, which we've been working on for 3 years now. And the way we come at that particular problem is not that dissimilar to the previous presentation, but our software is portfolio program and project management. So predominantly web application, but it's the 3 tiers there. And what we look to do is in the middle of this Venn diagram here, you can see that UniPhi is covering over the top of a whole bunch of different functions that would be on a project potentially now. Collaboration tools, which are very weak in construction, but they exist in other project worlds and they're very powerful. Project control systems, CRM applications, document collaboration, in-field technology, risk management and practice management. And our software looks to replace all of that. It basically can replace all of that. And if that's not the case, if the people are using different elements of that and that's being well used, we still want its data. We're very data hungry. And so we will pull it in through our REST API. And therefore we still get it anyway. And it's easy for us to do that because we already have the structures to capture that data through our own interfaces. So it's very simple to get it in. Around the outside where the Venn diagram doesn't touch are systems that we will never sort of have interfaces for directly. So we'll be always pulling that data in. We pull schedules in from P6 and MS Project. We pull Excel and emails in because unfortunately, as was mentioned previously, everyone's still using those dreaded tools. Estimating platforms we pull in dynamically, and we push as well as pull because we're pretty much a project accounting system to the accounting applications around the world. So it's all still enter once, use many, but all the data ends up in UniPhi. And then we use integrations with visualization tools to start our path down the track of AI. The way you start to learn how to develop an algorithm is to analyze large sets of data as a human being and then start to learn what you might train the data on. And then the data starts to teach itself, which is a little scary, but it's quite amazing. So in my case study, this is a $4.2 billion roads program. We're actually only helping a portion of this. So unlike the Nirvana deployment that Oliver described, where you're the client and the client is onboarding the entire project team, we're doing the design team supporting this. But there's 150 full-time equivalents in the design team. So it's a very large team and they're working on a very disparate, broad, small number of projects. I mean, a lot of projects, small project sizes, but lots of them, $4.2 billion worth of them. And the interesting thing about that is that had emerged over time. So when the project started, they had a funding, $4.2 billion. Yes, that's excellent. But they didn't have any projects. And so they had a stage gating process they developed that projects go through this process, kind of like a meat grinder that enables them to be initiated. So there was no idea what projects were going to be actually completed, where they were going to be, what they were going to look like. That's all had to emerge. And that's where our system has pretty much come into the fore for assisting them on that process. So that grand reveal is coming. But before I show it, just one more piece of background I wanted to show first. And that's our current software. So this screen reveal I'm going to do in a moment is not available at the moment. It's a July release, but this is the dashboardy type stuff that you get from portfolio information. This is aggregated data of RFI performance across all projects. And so because our system is portfolio, you can actually aggregate across and get portfolio related data across lots of projects. And that's crucial to learn. And you can see along the tabs here, there's lots and lots of other ones that you can do. And you see, I'm not accessing this in a Power BI workspace, I'm accessing it in our application. And so there's if I refresh the screen, because it's timed out on me, this one will be just a single project report. And so there are two examples of portfolio to project that you can get once you start capturing data. Across the top, you'll see a whole bunch of modules that basically represent the different things you can do in UniPhi. And if I go into the issues module, I'm now in the interface. I'm in Firefox. You can use any browser you like. I'm just going to go to a project quite quickly because I know time is of the essence. And I get a list of issues on that project. And I can basically categorize and drill down into those how I like. And so now I've got 4 issues. And if I was to click on one of them, I suddenly get all this extra data around that issue, and a very simple screen that people who aren't project management gurus can just populate and participate in. And so they're feeding me like the car in Tesla without them actually knowing they're doing it. And so they'll start to put metadata around this, including what milestones they're impacting on, and they'll get the contractor to value the variation so we know how much it costs from this issue. And then you get all these wonderful conversations and related documentation that can have thousands of words that we can trawl and index and do stuff with, including the ability to pull in emails dynamically from the system. And so if I'm in Outlook, you'll have a Save to UniPhi ribbon, which you'll click, and it'll bring up a form that you don't need to leave your inbox. You can stay passionately loving your inbox and essentially just keep filing your issues into UniPhi through there. And Bob's your uncle. But once we've got all that data, it took us a while to learn how to really get good stuff out of it. So dashboards look pretty, but they're generally sometimes are hard to really help project managers and portfolio managers. But what we're able to do now, the same issue screen you saw before, but it has this little search symbol over the top of a document. You click that, an algorithm runs, and it finds similar issues that have been resolved in the database on completely different projects. It brings up their description, their resolution date, how long it took to resolve them, what the cost of that resolution was, what parties were involved, which you can hover on and get their contact details and give them a call if you need to get more information. How it was resolved, which is the really clever part, because it's actually piecing together all of that commentary into a concatenated description of how it got resolved. And then obviously, if you wanted to see all that commentary that I showed you before on the previous screen with the lovely dog, you can click the link and it'll drill into that issue, and you'll start to see the real conversations that can be quite extensive that made that issue resolve as it emerged and as there was feedback loops between contractor, designer, and project manager through to the completion. So next month from our webinars, we're going to be showing more. We've got a lot more AI, another one around projects. You can put a description of the project, the basic business case data, and then say, find me similar, and it'll tell you how much they usually cost, what the timeline is, and the sorts of issues you're going to face when you go down that path. So that's going to be coming in the webinar, which you can register on. Brian Cairns supports us in the UK, and his number's on the screen, and he's on the session right now if you wanted to chat to him. And he'll be on later for the central chat. And feel free to email myself, Mark Heath. I'm the founder and CEO of UniPhi, and there's my mobile number there. I'm based in Sydney, so any time difference, please forgive me if I don't answer. It's 1 in the morning. But yeah, look, thanks for your time. Thanks for listening to me, Natta. And as I mentioned, these references will be put to Glimpse somehow, and you can get access to them if you're interested. Fantastic people, Kay, Terry, and Lynn, and I'd recommend reading some of their stuff.